Alright folks, we're back again working on this sheath. I'd like to say thank you if you've made it this far in the video series. I really appreciate you guys watching and viewing this project that I've been working on here. So basically, now that the tooling part is dried, everything's kind of softened back up. You can kind of see how it's got that red hue, and you can kind of pick it up a little better, the variations in color tone in the actual artwork. But okay, we're done with this part for now. So what I have to do now is, like I told you earlier in this series, that this lower portion of the sheath has to be stitched from the inside of this sheath before I glue down the front cover. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use an edging tool, and basically what this tool does is it has a little itty bitty sharp angled hole that goes all the way down through this little metal pin, and it has a screw on the end that adjusts the distance of how far away your stitch run is going to be from the edge of your work. So you can kind of screw this, preset it to how wide you want your stitch run to be against the edge of the leather, and it like gouges a little groove out of the leather. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of pull a couple passes through here, kind of seeing how this little square is going to work. But I want it to be a big hefty stitch hold. You know, this has been glued down and it's real strong, so I am wanting to stay off of this inside edge. I'm trying to keep everything tucked down further than where the point can start to get it. So I'm going to start with the bottom piece, just kind of eyeballing it, maybe measuring this out and putting a little bit of marking on it or something might help so you don't go past. But you just kind of push this thing down and you pull it along the leather, and I tend to take my time with this, just kind of gouging out a little bit at a time. That way I can make sure that I keep a square shape pattern. So as you can see, this kind of grooved a little tiny run out of the leather, keeping everything nice and square. You can go over it as many times as you want, but eventually to quit cutting out the leather, and that's going to give you a really good flat stamp run once you put your grooves in for your stitches and your threads. So I'm going to run around this and make a nice little square, kind of keep myself off of this inside edge with my stitches, and I'll be back here momentarily. Alright, so now we got our little square kind of cut in, and as you can see, there's little tiny tag ends that kind of still puff up on the edges where I didn't take everything to the corner. But the reason why I leave these and I don't try to worry about getting them out with the groover is because I'm going to be drilling holes through these corners anyway, so that's going to knock out a lot of this excess little fluffy stuff. And also, after I drill the holes, you know, I can kind of clean up the stitch run, and I'm still going to put a little stain back over this to kind of let these grooves go back to this dark tone of leather. So the next tool that I'm using is like a stitching wheel, and there's different sizes of these, different pin numbers that are on these stitches. You know, you just have to kind of check out your store and how close you want your stitches to be and see what kind of options you have available. But how this part works is once you have your groove, you can take like a paintbrush and just a little bit of water, and you're going to wet the groove where your stitches inevitably are going to be placed down in, and you know, get yourself a decent little coat down through there to make sure that that leather's softening up. Because what's going to happen is once this leather is softened up, I can take this little stitch wheel tool. I'm getting ready to show you here in one second. Once this water gets on here a little better, got your stitching wheel tool, and what you do with this is you kind of get yourself a nice flat spot. You always want to start with one point into the corner of the work, and you just kind of place the corner down in, applying pressure, and then you roll it. And I always roll it slow, that way I can make sure my corners are going to line up really nice. and then I run it back on itself, and what that does is leaves a little spot to where you can get your stitches in. So let me run around this real quick and get this in here, and I always set that back down on the corner. Make sure everything is nice and pressed down. Sorry about the camera juggle there, you guys. I don't have a real secure tripod. So we get our stitch running like that. So now we have a nice calculated spot to place your stitches and the corner down, you know, all the way through there. So now basically what I'm going to do is I have a small drill press that I do use to cheat to punch my holes with, but realistically, guys, I'm going through a lot of leather here, so yeah, I'm using a drill press. Everybody has their different opinions on that. My opinion is it works best for me, so that's the way I do it. If you want to take a stitching awl and work it through by hand, all the power to you. You know, it's your project. I'm just happy you're having fun. So everybody's seen a drill press work before. I'm fairly sure that you know how to do this, or there's a video out there you can watch. So I'm going to drill some holes in this and get this prepared for doing the first part of the stitching. I'll be back here in a few, guys. Alright, so we got our holes drilled all the way through the leather here on the inside, and like I said, I was trying to keep away from this edge where the knife's going to start to go in. Once it gets down to pretty much where these stitches are, it's going to flush back out to slide down in the sheath. What I'm going to do with this inside piece now is they make a grooving tool for leather that's like a V-shaped, trowel-shaped thing that you can kind of like score out with. I don't own one of these, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a razor knife and I'm going to come down through here and I'm going to cut some little V-shaped gouges out to where I know my stitches are going to get recessed down into the leather once I do my final stitching, but I also am trying to leave a little bit of material that I can kind of, when I pull the threads tight, it can kind of sink down in the leather. That way when I go to finish everything off before I glue this on, I can burnish all this back down and put a little bit of top coat on it, or temp coat, and kind of work everything in and burnish this in over this threads just a little bit. So I'm going to cut these grooves out with the razor knife, and then I'm going to be staining this. As you can see, I got the holes drilled in, and then I went through and took the stitching wheel back over the holes just to kind of clean everything up. So we'll cut this V out and we'll be ready for a little bit of stitching. So we'll be back. Alright, so I'm back after kind of carving out the little grooves I was talking about. And like I said, it doesn't look like the cleanest job ever. I'm trying to leave a little bit of material that I can squish back down over the threads for the most part to help protect them from the knife when it gets put in here. So I'm going to take a paintbrush and some of my brown leather dye, and I'm going to kind of stain this groove back up, and grab a needle and thread and start to sew this up. I'm not going to video any of the sewing process on this. Like I said, this isn't necessarily a how-to. This is just how I put this project together. So I'm going to grab some needle and thread, stitch this up, make sure it's a really good secure bond, and I'll be back when I'm cleaning up this part. So we got the back dangler sheath tab stitched on. We had stained the background of the groove, had carved in with the razor blade the grooves on the back. So this is what I mean by cutting that groove. So now what happened is when I pulled the thread tight through all this thickness of leather, it recessed down in here almost a 1/16 of an inch, maybe not quite that. And then what I did to close the gap was I just took the end of my stitch groover and just kind of smushed it down and kind of worked it around to where I could seal that edge up a little bit, to where now we don't have to worry about our threads anymore. They're good and covered. And just for this little bit of roughness here, I'm probably just going to take a little bit of leather sealer and put it over the top of this just to kind of help stick it together. So there's that part. I'm getting ready to have to carry in some groceries, so I'm gonna cut off here real quick, and next step is going to be to glue the top on. So I'll be back here in a moment. Alright, so we're back. We're getting ready to glue on this top panel, but I wanted to have a quick intermission. All you fellas out there, if you ever go to your cupboard and you find a cookie that looks like this, but exactly like this on the other side, because this was a big bite out, do not touch it. Your girlfriend will come at you like a spider monkey. So let me take my thrashing and I'll be back gluing. Alright, so we're back. We got everything glued up. Got all the clamps going around this thing here. Smashing everything together. These clamps help out a lot, y'all. And I know sometimes these can actually be pretty pricey little clamps depending on how many you need, but I found that if you have a Harbor Tool Freight or an equivalent to that around you, you should be able to pick these up for $1 a piece, and they got some really good clamp to them. I mean, some are better than the others. That's why I always test out all the ones that I buy. I look through the bundles that they have and kind of check them to see how strong they are, and I always pick the strongest ones. Then they usually do the coupons. You can get coupons sent to your house for 20% off of your total purchase, so I always do that to cut the cost on getting these good clamps. But these things work really good, and they're just cheapy Harbor Tool and Freight clamps with a lot of grip. So we're going to let this dry up, and we'll see how it turns out once this is done.